Welcome back to the infamous Metalben Mobile. And we got a 30th anniversary album to talk about today. Released on August 21st, 1990. Now, 1990 was a massive year when it comes to heavy metal albums, thrash metal albums. You know, there was just so much that came out. I'll tell you what, it looked like metal was going to be on top of the fucking world back in 1990 with the amount of killer albums that came out. I mean, you had Megadeth, Rust in Peace, you had Judas Priest, Painkiller, you had Testament, Souls of Black. You know, you had the debut of Tourniquet with Stop the Bleeding. You had Deliverance with Weapons of Our Warfare. You had Torrenega's God's Gift. You had Eccentrix's Those Who Vanished. You know, you had Acid Rain with Obnoxious. You had King Diamond with The Eye. Don Dawkins put a solo album out that year. Oh, what the fuck is it called now? I forgot. Anyways, you get the drift. There was a lot of killer metal coming out of 1990. That's not everything, man. There's so much other albums that came out that year, but you know what? The album we're going to talk about right now turned 30 today. I'm talking about Anthrax Persistence of Time. Now, I do believe the Eccentrics album I mentioned too, Those Who Vanished, also turns 30 today. I would talk about that if I had a physical copy of it, but I don't have a physical copy of it. And I looked on eBay and that CD is expensive as all heck. Anyways, so yeah, released on August 21st, 1999. I'll tell you, or 1990, excuse me. This album, man, their fifth studio album released on Island Records, Megaforce. You know, you got Joey Belladonna on vocals, you got Scott Ann on rhythm guitars, you got Frankie Bello on bass, you got Dan Spitz on lead guitars, you got Charlie Benetti on drums. And I'll tell you what, this album's way different than State of Euphoria and Among the Living in a lot of ways. Due to the fact that the lyrics are much more serious on this album is definitely more mature. Due to the fact that on, you know, State of Euphoria and Among the Living, you know, they would talk about Judge Dredd and stuff like that, or, you know, Stephen King novels, you know, on those two albums, or other, you know, subject matters, or, you know, there was a lot of comedy on those albums too, to an extent, where this album's much more serious, it's much darker, it's much more progressive. The thrash might be stripped back just a bit, but there's still a good bit of thrash on here, you know. And yeah, the songwriting is definitely more lengthy. I should, you know, point that out also. So yeah, man, I got many memories with Persistence of Time by Anthrax. I first heard this back in 1990, actually. I remember an older buddy of mine got this. At the time, I was getting ready to go into 6th grade at the time. I was around 12 years old. No, I was 11 years old, I'm sorry. Because I'm 41 now, so yeah, I would have been 11 years old. And I was getting exposed to a lot of really cool music between 1988 and 1990. So yeah. But anyways, we're going to get on to the album. I got many memories with this album. When I look at this album, it just brings back a lot of great memories. You know, be it hanging out with buddies of mine, listening to it, you know. Or just walking in the woods or wherever at my grandparents' place with my Walkman, listening to it. Or going to school, listening to it. Okay, let's get on to the album. I bragged on long enough, so we got time to begin the album. Man, so you got the ticking clock at the beginning. Starts out very slow, then it speeds up, then it explodes, and then comes this frantic noise of metal. Oh man, what an awesome beginning. This might be my favorite beginning to an Anthrax album too. And if I were to do a top 10 favorite Anthrax songs, I'm sure Time would come in at number 1. Or maybe not number 1, but in the top 5, because this is my favorite track off of Persistence of Time. Just great stuff. I love the way it ends with the outro, you know, how it fades out, and Charlie just gets faster and faster with them drums, where he's doing blast beats at the end. And it builds into track 2, Blood. Now, Blood, again, another lengthy track. It's over 7 minutes long. You know, Time's almost 7 minutes long. Now, Blood is over 7 minutes long, so yeah, it's got some length to it. A lot of people complain about the length of these songs, why this album might be a turnoff to some people. Not me. I've dealt with this album for 30 years, so it doesn't really bother me. I think Blood's another phenomenal track. It begins with really cool drums by Charlie, then it speeds up a bit, you know. It's got a really cool chorus too in it. Keep It in the Family. Now, this one's notably different. Now, what I forgot to mention again is that on Time, I noticed the guitars are tuned down half a step on that track. First time Anthrax ever did it, because the other Anthrax albums were in E standard tuning. Besides, when they did the cover of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, they tuned down to D. You know, on the I'm the Man EP back in 1987. But anyways, moving on. Keep It in the Family, yes. This one's tuned down to drop D tuning. It's heavy as hell. Kind of, man, if I can compare it, because it's slower paced, it's got that slow, doomy Sabbath kind of sound in a way. Kind of like Skull Crusher by Overkill from Years of Decay, maybe a little bit. But yeah, it's a really, really cool track. Again, a lengthy track too. Then we get track 4, In My World. Now, In My World is notoriously famous for being on an episode of Married with Children, when Anthrax guest appeared on that show and performed that track. So yes, that was around 1992. You know, I remember watching the episode as a kid, or, you know, as a teenager. And yeah, man, really cool episode of Married with Children with Anthrax on it. I love the part where, I think it's Kelly takes the guitar, starts sticking it through a wall or something. Pretty cool shit. So yeah, In My World, though, track-wise, it's a decent track. It's got a melodic chorus to it. You know, again, a decent Anthrax track. You know. Then we got Gridlock. Okay. Now this is where we get to a serious thrasher on this album. This track, yes, track 5, Gridlock, is just straight up thrash. Speed metal, whatever. It's got, you know, fast palm mute picking, and Charlie comes in with these huge drums and double bass, and it's just frantic as all hell. A lot of people think Gridlock's the weakest track off this album, or one of the weakest tracks off this album. I don't get it. I think it's a very, very good, strong track. I don't get why it gets so much hate. I've always enjoyed it. I guess people have different opinions. Now we get on to the second half of this album, which Gridlock would end side 1 if you had the cassette version of this. So Intro to Reality is next. Man, this is a really different type of track right here. It's an instrumental, but it's very progressive sounding, which is different for Anthrax at the time. So you can definitely tell, you know, they're taking influence from Metallica. And it definitely works. You know, it's got this melodic intro. It's got great harmony guitar parts. Then it builds up and gets heavier and builds into Belly of the Beast, which you could put these two tracks together, because to me it is one track. Because, you know, it just goes together so well. So yes, Belly of the Beast, another tremendous track off this freaking album, man. I'm telling you. Just killer stuff. I really like it. Great rips in this track. Again, great drumming by Charlie Benetti. This might be Charlie Benetti's best drumming on an Anthrax album. Now, that could be debatable, too, because he's done great drumming on every album he's been on. But he really does some exceptional drumming on this. Got the Time is next, a cover track by Joe Jackson. Just a short little cover, a punky cover. I'll tell you what, man, I should point out Frank Bellows' bass playing on this track. It's phenomenal. He does like a little bass solo in the middle of it. I'll tell you what, man, there's so many underrated thrash metal bass players. I should just do a video on underrated bass players sometime. Because I don't feel like the bass players in thrash metal really get much recognition besides, you know, the main ones like Cliff Burton or Steve DiGiorio, you know. But yeah, great stuff. Hatred is next. Some people pronounce it hate, red. I've always pronounced it hatred because that's what it adds up to. You know, a deep cut on here. I think this is a very good track. I really enjoy Hatred. It's more like mid-paced, kind of Sabbath-like. It's got some doomy riffs in it, you know. But yeah, it's a mid-paced track, you know. It's definitely a very underrated track on this album. Then we go to One Man Stands. I love the way this track begins. Man, begins with a cool-ass kick drum and a doomy Sabbath type of riff. Then it gets pretty thrashy, some cool double bass by Charlie Benetti, some great vocals by Joey Belladonna, and of course you get some great lead playing by Dan Spitz on this track and throughout the whole album. So yeah, One Man Stands is a great track. Discharge is next. Another underrated track on here. Probably the second thrashiest track on here, you know, under Gridlock. I think Gridlock's definitely the fastest track on this album, but yeah. Discharge is a thrasher, man. Great way to end this freaking album. And one of my favorite Anthrax tracks. Like Hatred, One Man Stance, Gridlock, and Discharge. Maybe Blood. I don't think I've ever seen them play these songs live. Like on YouTube videos or whatnot. And I'll tell you what, speaking of Anthrax, as far as a live band, they are phenomenal live. I'll tell you what, there was a time too, like around 1990 or 91, like when Bring the Noise came out, I thought Anthrax was going to become as big as Metallica. I really did. It seemed like it was going to happen, but it didn't quite happen. And I think I pretty much said everything I needed to say here. Produced by Anthrax and Mark Dodson, you know, mixed by Steve Thompson and Mike Barbaro. Mike Barbario, or whatever the fuck his last name is. Yeah, anyways, that's Persistence of Time. I think I covered everything here, and that's my review. My 30th anniversary review of Persistence of Time. And keep it metal. And stay tuned, because I got a reaction video coming up later on tonight again. Stay tuned for some more Metalben Chronicles.